Hello and welcome to Fluent Friends. I'm Mia.
And I'm Leo. It's great to have you with us for our very first episode.
It really is. We're so excited to get started. Fluent Friends is the podcast where we help you improve your English listening and speaking skills through brief mystery challenges.
Right, no boring grammar lessons here. We believe the best way to learn a language is to hear it used naturally. Each week, we'll pick a topic, explore some useful phrases and idioms, and then, as Mia said, we'll give you a little mystery to solve. So listen carefully.
Exactly. It's a challenge to test your listening skills. We'll tell you a short story, and you have to spot the key piece of information that solves the puzzle. Stick with us to the end to see if you get it right. And of course, if you want to continue learning every day, like and subscribe.
So, Mia, shall we get the ball rolling?
Let's do it. For our first episode, we're talking about something everyone has to do, but not everyone loves small talk.
The art of talking about nothing of consequence, a true social minefield.
You say that, but it's so important, right? It's how you break the ice with new people, especially at work or a party. It's the first step to making a real connection.
I suppose so, though I think there's a bit of a cultural difference. In the UK, the gold standard of small talk is, of course, the weather. It's safe, it's universally relatable, and it avoids any actual personal conversation.
Oh, for sure. The weather is a safe topic in the US too, but I feel like we try to move past it quickly. We want to find some common ground. So we might ask, so what do you do for fun around here? Or have you seen any good movies lately?
See, that's already getting quite specific. We might find that a bit direct. I once had an American tourist ask me my entire life story while we were both waiting for a bus. By the time it arrived 5 minutes later, he knew my job, my sister's name, and my opinion on the local football club. It was terrifyingly efficient.
That sounds about right. We see it as being friendly and open. We're trying to avoid that dreaded, awkward silence at all costs.
Right, that is the ultimate goal, but we achieve it with a more gradual approach. Let's talk about the classic "How are you" exchange. It's a perfect example.
Yes, in the States, if someone asks, how's it going? The script is pretty rigid. You say, good, you? Or pretty good, how about you? You could also say something like, hanging in there, if you're having a busy or stressful week. It's a casual way to say you're managing, but you're not having the best day ever. But you're definitely not supposed to actually tell them about your terrible day.
Absolutely not. That would be a major social foul. In the UK, if a friend asks, all right, the only correct response is, yeah, not too bad. You? We also have the classic can't complain, which is a wonderfully non-committal way of saying things are generally fine without inviting further questions.
Can't complain. I like that. It's useful. So the idea is you ask these questions, find a little bit of common ground, and if you're lucky, you really connect with the person. You hit it off.
That's the ideal outcome, and if you don't, you need a polite exit strategy. This is crucial. You can't just turn and walk away.
No, definitely not. My go to is something like, well, it was great chatting with you. I'll let you get back to it. It's a friendly and clearly signals the conversation is over.
A very useful phrase. We might say, right, I must be off, or anyway, I'll let you go, which serves the same purpose. It's all about navigating these little interactions smoothly. And the very common topic that comes up is where you're from. People often ask, what brings you here if you're in a new city or at an event?
That's a great one. And that often leads to people talking about their hometown, which brings us to another key phrase back home.
Yes, back home. It's such a simple phrase, but it's packed with meaning.
It really is. It doesn't just mean the house you live in now, it's more about your origins.
Precisely. If I'm living in New York and I say the chocolate back home is much better, I'm not talking about some secret stash in my apartment. I mean the chocolate in the UK. It's tied to my identity.
Exactly. It's about your roots, where you grew up. And that little phrase is actually the key to solving today's mystery challenge.
Indeed it is. So let me set the scene. Picture the office kitchen on Monday morning. The coffee machine is gurgling, making its usual questionable noises. I'm there, patiently waiting for my tea.
And in walks the new colleague, David. I was there too, grabbing some water. David has this big, friendly smile, and he comes right over to introduce himself.
Right. So he says, Morning, I'm David. Just started in the marketing team today. We do the usual introductions, shake hands, and then, to break the ice, I asked him the classic small talk question.
You asked him where he was from, right?
I did. I said, Welcome to the team, David. So, where are you joining us from? And he replied very clearly, Thanks, I just moved here from Chicago. Lived there for the past 5 years working for an ad agency.
And of course, being me, I got excited and said something like, Oh, Chicago, I've always wanted to go. You must tell me if the deep dish pizza is really as good as they say.
And he was very charming about it, said it absolutely is, you have to try it. We chatted for another minute or so, and it was a perfectly pleasant conversation. We all seemed to hit it off.
Yeah, he seemed great.
Totally normal. Now, fast forward to this morning. I'm back at the coffee machine, my natural habitat, apparently.
It's your information hub.
It's where the drama happens. So David comes in again, and we start chatting about the weekend. He mentioned he spent Sunday watching baseball and that he's a huge Red Sox fan.
The Boston Red Sox. An important detail for our international listeners. Boston and Chicago are two very different and very rival American cities with very different and very rival sports teams.
Precisely. So naturally, I was a bit confused. I said, Oh, a Red Sox fan? I thought most people from Chicago were die-hard Cubs fans.
A very reasonable question to ask. You'd be walking into enemy territory wearing a Red Sox hat in Chicago.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting. David laughs and says, Oh, for sure they are, but you can't shake your childhood team, you know. The baseball seasons back home were a really big deal for my family growing up.
He said back home, the magic words, and you picked up on it immediately, didn't you?
I did. My linguistic detective senses were tingling. So I asked him directly, Oh, so back home isn't Chicago for you? And he smiled and said, Nah, that was just for a job after college. I grew up just outside of Boston.
Okay, so there you have it, listeners. On Monday, David says he's from Chicago. On Tuesday, he's talking about growing up in Boston.
So here is your challenge. What is David's true hometown, the place he's really from? Is it Chicago or Boston? And what is the single key phrase that gives you the definitive answer?
We'll give you just a moment to think about it.
All right, have you got your answer locked in?
Okay, Leo, let's not keep them in suspense. What's the correct answer?
The answer is Boston. David is from Boston.
And the key phrase that unlocks the whole mystery is, of course, back home.
Exactly. When David said, I just moved here from Chicago, he was being literal and factual. That's the last city he lived in before this job. It's a correct statement.
Right, but it's not where he's from in the cultural sense. When a person uses the phrase back home, especially when talking about something emotional like a childhood sports team, they're almost always referring to the place where they grew up, the place that shaped their identity. It holds an emotional weight that the city I lived in for 5 years just doesn't have.
It's a subtle but very important distinction. Think of it this way. If someone asks you where you live, you give your current address. But if someone asks where you're from, your answer might be about where you were born or spent your childhood. Back home taps into that second meaning.
That's a great way to put it. So even though he lived in Chicago for 5 years, his roots, his sense of home in that core sense, is still Boston. It's a perfect example of how much meaning can be packed into a couple of simple words and how listening closely helps you understand the full picture.
It really is. Paying attention to these little phrases can tell you so much more than just the literal words being said. It's about understanding context and emotional connection.
And that's what this podcast is all about, helping you catch those little nuances to become a more confident and fluent English speaker.
Right. We hope you enjoyed our first mystery. Did you get it right? Check the video notes for key phrases from today's conversation.
Thanks so much for listening to episode 1 of Fluent Friends. We'll be back next time with a new topic, new idioms, and of course, a new challenge.
We will. If there are any topics you would like us to cover, please drop us a message. We would love to hear from you.
Until then, happy learning!
Cheers.